Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sassy Pants, wife to Matty the rancher, and I'll be your storyteller today. Welcome to Adventures with Sodak Pete. Stories that celebrate the hard work, the big hearts, and the wide open spaces of ranch life. Out here, every day is an adventure, and we hope each and every one of you listening can imagine yourself as a little Sodak Pete, learning the ropes, getting your hands a little dirty, and helping out where it counts. So grab your boots and tip your hat, and let's see what today's adventure has in store. Sodak Pete, feeding cows on the ranch. It was a cold South Dakota morning, the kind that makes your nose tingle and the windows fog up. Pete blinked open his bright blue eyes and he grinned. Millie stretched and wagged her tail. She was ready for the day. Outside, the sun was shining and the sky was bright blue. Not windy, not snowing. Not yet. The kind of day where your breath makes those frosty little clouds in the air every time you breathe. Inside, the house was warm and the smell of sizzling bacon and buttery toast filled the air. Pete chattered away at the breakfast table, telling Millie all the things they might do today. Check some cows, maybe ride an Old Gray, maybe even see Jinxy in action. Millie listened with perked ears and hopeful eyes. Matty sat nearby with a steaming mug of coffee, slicing into his eggs and smiling. "You want to help me feed some cows today, Pete?" Millie too, of course. Pete's mouth was full, but his happy nod said yes, and he quickly poured syrup on his second pancake and he gobbled it down. After breakfast, they all bundled up. Pete in his green hat pulled down real low, brown jacket buttoned up real tight, and his warm mittens. Matty wore his tan coveralls, his wild rag tied warm around his neck, and his big winter hat. Millie, she was dancing around by the door, just waiting to get outside. They stepped into that cold morning and walked across the ranch yard together. Their boots were crunching in the cold snow, and the frosty puffs of breath came out of Pete and Millie's mouths as they walked. Pete was busy trying to make shapes with his breath, but they just floated away. Pete pointed to the frost on the fence. "That looks kind of like it's covered in sugar, Matty." Matty said, "First, we need to check the waters," and they all headed in that direction. Winter watering is always tricky. Cattle need fresh water every single day, even when it's freezing cold outside. Keeping waters from icing over can be a real challenge, so Matty was awful thankful when they found open water in the tank. Next, they headed over by the barn and they peeked at Jinxy. "Oh good, she's still plugged in," Matty said. "Keeps the water in her engine warm so she can start without grumbling too much." Now to feed some hay. They climbed into Old Gray and grabbed a big round bale of hay. They drove out to a pasture where the bred heifers were waiting. The girls mooed and trotted over, happy to see the pickup and even happier to get some hay. Even though it was cold out, those heifers were hopping and frisky. The sunshine and still air made it a fine winter day. After they ate, they started to settle in, content and full. A full cow in the winter is a happy cow, you know. When the heifers were fed, they bounced back to the ranch yard in Old Gray. Millie hopped out first and bounded toward the porch. Pete followed, brushing the snow off his pants. Inside, the steam was rising from their noon dinner plates. They ate shredded beef and potatoes, warm rolls, and thick slices of apple. Pete talked about the crunchy snow and how Millie zipped around the yard like she had rockets in her feet. After dinner, they bundled up and headed back outside. Matt got Jinxy started. The old telehandler gave a grumbly start, puffing out swirls of light gray smoke from the stack. "She's awake," Pete laughed. Jinxy always gave a little growl when it was cold, but she was reliable and she was strong. Matty grinned. "Glad the heater worked," he said. "She's always a lot happier when we plug her in," he said. Matty used Jinxy to grab a few round bales, and he gave them to the group of older cows behind the barn. Pete and Millie stayed in the yard, sliding down snowbanks and pretending to be rounding up invisible calves. Pete whooped and hollered while Millie raced in loops as they roped and wrangled until they were wore out. Once the older cows were fed, Matty said, "Time to feed the big calves." Pete hopped right into Old Gray. Millie was right beside him, paws on the seat, ready to ride. "Matty, how do folks feed hay before pickups and tractors?" Pete asked as they headed out to the pasture. Matty smiled. Back then, big workhorses would pull a sleigh through the snow, stacked real high with hay. And then one or two people would ride along on the sleigh and use pitchforks. to toss the hay off into piles every few steps. What about when there wasn't snow? Pete asked. Then we'd use a low hay rack wagon instead of a sleigh, said Matty. Pete imagined the team of horses, the big mounds of hay, and the snow flying behind the sleigh. That sounds like a hay parade, he said. Matty chuckled. A hay parade, all right, with a lot of muscle behind it. Matty grinned and he handed Pete a pitchfork. Hey, Pete, why don't you try pitching some hay the old-fashioned way? So Pete grabbed it and gave it a go. He worked away at that round bale that Matty had just dropped on the ground for the calves. He pitched a little hay and he scratched a little bit more, and then he pitched some more hay. After a few more tosses, he paused to catch his breath, sweat on his brow and steam rising from his cheeks. Whew, it really is a lot of work, he said. Matty gave him a proud nod and patted him on the shoulder. Then they grabbed a bale of hay with Old Gray and rolled it out for the calves. They watched the calves eating and drove around through them, watching for healthy eyes and perky ears, looking to see if any of them weren't feeling well. Looked like all of the calves were looking good, so they headed back to the house for supper. As the sky grew dark and the stars came out, we gathered by the fire with popcorn and stories. Pete built block towers while Millie napped, and Matty and we smiled at each other, thankful for a good day, this good life, and this little ranch crew of ours. Thanks for riding along with us today. Pete hopes that you'll join him on his next adventure.